I parked the new truck outside. Inside, I heard laughter. My husband was mimicking my voice to entertain my daughter-in-law. "I'll get the car from her today. And tomorrow we dump the idiot in a nursing home." She clapped. I walked in, face wet with tears. But I didn't hand over the gift. I held up my phone and pressed play. The blood drained from both their faces when they heard who was on the other end of the line listening to that conversation in real time.
Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching.
I parked the new truck outside. Inside, I heard laughter. My husband was mimicking my voice to entertain my daughter-in-law. "I'll get the car from her today, and tomorrow we dump the idiot in a nursing home." She clapped. That satisfying slap of her palms would be the last sound of their old life. The key to the Ford F-150 was still warm in my hand. I had driven it off the lot exactly 47 minutes ago, paid cash. $52,000 from my secret savings account, the one Donald never knew existed, the one I had been feeding $20 at a time for the past 34 years. I had planned to surprise him. Park it in the driveway, walk in with the keys dangling from my fingers, watch his face light up the way it used to when we were young, and he still looked at me like I mattered. Instead, I stood on my own porch, listening to my husband of 40 years pretend to be me. "Oh, Donald, I'm so confused," he said in a high-pitched whine that sounded nothing like my voice. "Where are my pills? What day is it? Did I already eat breakfast?" Kimberly laughed harder. "You should do that for the doctor. He'll sign the papers in 5 minutes." "That's the plan. Patterson owes me a favor from the dealership days. 1 phone call, 1 evaluation, and Ruth goes to Shady Pines. And the house? In my name by Christmas." I should have walked away. I should have gotten back in that truck and driven until I hit the ocean. But my feet would not move. My hand found my phone in my pocket, and I remembered the call I had placed just before pulling into the driveway. Harold Mitchell, my attorney, the man I had hired 3 weeks ago when I found the papers. The papers Kimberly had left in the printer by accident. Petition for emergency guardianship. Application for involuntary commitment. A draft letter to my bank requesting access to accounts on behalf of an incapacitated family member. I had not told anyone about those papers. Not even Sophie, my granddaughter, though she was the one who first noticed something was wrong. She had called me in September, her voice tight with worry. "Grandma, why is Dad asking me about your medications? He wanted to know if you ever seemed confused when I visit." I told her I did not know, but I knew. I knew in my bones that something was coming. Harold had advised me to gather evidence. "Call me when you have something concrete," he had said. "I'll listen, I'll record, and we'll build a case." The phone was still connected. Harold was still on the line, listening to every word through my pocket. I pushed open the front door. The laughter stopped. Donald was standing in the middle of the living room, one hand raised in the air, frozen mid-gesture. Kimberly was on the couch, a glass of my good wine in her hand, her mouth still curved in a smile that was rapidly fading. "Ruth." Donald lowered his hand. "You're back early." "I am." "Where's the truck? I thought you were picking it up today." "I did." He looked past me toward the driveway. His eyes found the gleaming red F-150, and something flickered across his face. Confusion, then suspicion. "You paid for it already?" "I did. With what money?" I did not answer. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The call timer showed 004723. Harold had been listening for almost 48 minutes. "What are you doing?" Kimberly asked. She set down the wine glass. Her voice had that sharp edge it always got when she felt threatened. "I'm finishing a phone call," I said. I lifted the phone to my ear. "Harold, did you hear all of that?" The silence in the room was absolute. "Every word, Ruth." Harold's voice came through the speaker, calm and measured. "I have it recorded, all of it." Donald's face went gray, not white, not pale. Gray, like old concrete, like something that had been dead for a long time and was only now realizing it. "Who is Harold?" Kimberly demanded. She was on her feet now, her hands clenched at her sides. "My attorney." "Your what?" My attorney. I hired him 3 weeks ago, after I found the guardianship papers you left in the printer. I watched her face cycle through several expressions: shock, fear, rage, then something that looked almost like respect, which made me angrier than anything else. Ruth, sweetheart, let me explain, Donald started. Don't. The word came out harder than I intended. 40 years of marriage, 40 years of cooking his meals and washing his clothes and pretending not to notice when he flirted with the waitress or stayed late at the office or forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. 40 years of being Ruth Coleman, Donald's wife, instead of just Ruth. You were going to put me in a nursing home, I said. You were going to have me declared incompetent. You were going to take my house, my money, everything I spent my whole life building. It's not like that. I heard you, Donald. I heard you imitating me. I heard you laughing about it with her. I pointed at Kimberly, who took a step backward like I had struck her. The idiot, I continued. That's what you called me. The idiot you were going to dump in a home. Donald's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Harold, I said into the phone, what happens now? Now we file. I'll have the papers ready by tomorrow morning. Divorce petition, restraining order, motion to freeze joint assets. Harold's voice was steady, professional, utterly without emotion. I've already contacted a forensic accountant to review your financial records. Based on what I heard tonight, we have grounds for fraud charges as well. Donald found his voice. Fraud? What fraud? I haven't done anything. You transferred $47,000 from the joint savings account last month, I said. You forged my signature on a home equity application. You contacted Dr. Patterson about providing a false medical evaluation. How do you know about— He stopped. His face went from gray to something closer to green. Sophie, Kimberly said. Her voice was flat, dead. That little bitch has been spying on us. Don't you dare talk about my granddaughter that way. She's been going through our things, our emails, Your plans to steal from a 64-year-old woman and lock her in a facility against her will? I shook my head. Yes, she found those. She showed them to me, and I showed them to Harold. The room was very quiet. Outside, a dog barked. A car drove past. Normal sounds of a normal evening in a normal neighborhood, while inside this house, a 40-year marriage was crumbling into dust. What do you want? Donald asked. His voice had changed. Smaller now, defeated. I want you out of my house, our house, my house. My parents left it to me. The deed is in my name. It has always been in my name. I watched the confusion cross his face. You never bothered to check, did you? You just assumed that because you paid the mortgage, it belonged to you. I paid for everything. You paid with money I helped earn. Money from the insurance settlement when my mother died. Money from my teaching pension. Money I put into our accounts for 40 years while you played golf and complained about your back. Donald had no response to that. Because it was true, and we both knew it. I want you out by Friday, I said. Take your clothes, your golf clubs, your collection of vintage car magazines. Take whatever Kimberly thinks she's entitled to. But the house stays with me. You can't do this. I already have. I lifted the phone again. Harold, please confirm for my husband that I can, in fact, do this. Coleman, Harold said, his voice crisp through the speaker. Your wife has full legal standing to remove you from the property. I've reviewed the deed, the mortgage documents, and the relevant case law. You have no claim to the residence. I strongly advise you to seek your own legal counsel and comply with Mrs. Coleman's request. Donald looked at me. Really looked at me. Maybe for the first time in years. Ruth, he said. Please. I know I made mistakes, but— Mistakes? The laugh that came out of me was sharp enough to cut glass. You were going to have me committed, Donald. You were going to lock me in a facility and take everything I own. That's not a mistake. That's betrayal. I walked to the front door and held it open. Get out, both of you, now. Kimberly grabbed her purse. She did not look at me as she walked past. She was already on her phone, probably calling Brandon, probably spinning some story about how his crazy mother had finally lost her mind. Let her call, let her spin. I had the recording. I had Harold. I had the truth. Donald stopped in the doorway. He turned back to face me, and for a moment, I saw the man I had married. The handsome salesman with the easy smile and the promises that never quite came true. I didn't mean it, he said. The things I said. I was just, get out, Donald. He left. I closed the door behind him and leaned against it. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. 40 years. 40 years of loving a man who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to be removed. The phone was still in my hand. Harold's voice came through, gentle now. Ruth, are you all right? No, I said, but I will be. Do you want me to send someone over? I can have my associate there in 20 minutes. I need to be alone. I need to think. Call me if you need anything, anytime. I mean that. Thank you, Harold. I ended the call and stood in the silence of my house. The house my parents had built. The house where I had raised my son. The house Donald had tried to steal from me. The truck keys were still in my pocket. $52,000 of freedom, sitting in my driveway, waiting to take me anywhere I wanted to go. But not tonight. Tonight, I would stay here. Tonight, I would sit in my living room and drink my own wine and think about everything that was going to happen next. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The guardianship papers had been sitting in the printer tray for 3 days before I found them. It was a Tuesday, September 14th. I remember because it was the anniversary of my mother's death, and I had been looking for her old recipe cards to make her peach cobbler. The recipe cards were in a box somewhere in the office, and while I was searching, I noticed the printer. Kimberly had used it the night before. She and Brandon had stayed late after dinner, working on some financial things, she had said. I thought nothing of it. Kimberly was always working on financial things. She was a real estate agent, which meant she was either closing a deal or complaining about one. But she had left papers in the tray, just forgotten them there, like she forgot the coffee mugs in the sink and the shoes in the hallway and the passive-aggressive comments about my cooking. I picked them up intending to set them aside. Then I saw my name. Petition for Emergency Guardianship of Ruth Coleman. I sat down in Donald's office chair and read every word. The petition described a woman I did not recognize, a woman who forgot to turn off the stove, a woman who got lost driving to the grocery store, a woman who repeated the same questions over and over, who could not manage her own finances, who posed a danger to herself and others. None of it was true. Not a single word. I had never forgotten the stove. I had never gotten lost. My mind was as sharp at 64 as it had been at 30, maybe sharper, because now I knew enough to pay attention. But someone had written this down. Someone had made it official. Someone had attached a draft letter to my bank, requesting account access for an incapacitated family member. Someone was Kimberly. The signature line at the bottom had her name, with space for Donald's right beside it. I sat in that chair for 2 hours. I read the papers again and again, trying to find some other explanation. Maybe it was a template she was using for work. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I had misunderstood. But there was no misunderstanding. The address was my address. The bank was my bank. The description of my declining mental state included details that could only have come from someone who lived in this house. When Donald came home that evening, I watched him from the kitchen. He kissed my cheek, asked what was for dinner, complained about traffic. Normal. Everything normal. But I knew now. I knew what he was planning. I did not confront him. I did not confront Kimberly when she came over the following Sunday with her fake smile and her expensive perfume. I smiled back. I served the pot roast. I pretended. And then I called Sophie. My granddaughter was 19 years old and studying pre-law at the University of Tennessee. She was the only member of my family who still visited me regularly, not because she had to, not because Donald or Brandon asked her to, but because she wanted to. Something's wrong, she said when she answered the phone. I can hear it in your voice. I told her about the papers, about the guardianship petition, about the bank letters. I told her everything. The silence on the other end of the line lasted a long time. Grandma, Sophie finally said, I need to tell you something. She had noticed things too, little things at first. Her father asking about my medications. Kimberly mentioning options for when grandma gets worse. Brandon complaining about how hard it was to take care of an aging parent, even though I had never asked him for help with anything. They've been planning this for months, Sophie said. I didn't want to believe it, but I know. What are you going to do? That was the question. What was I going to do? I was 64 years old. I had been married to Donald for 40 years. My son was complicit in a scheme to steal my home and my freedom. My daughter-in-law was the architect of my destruction. What could I possibly do? I'm going to fight, I said, but I need your help. Sophie drove down that weekend. She brought her laptop and her determination and a list of questions that showed me exactly why she was going to make an excellent lawyer someday. We started with the finances. I knew Donald handled the money. He had always handled the money, ever since we got married. He paid the bills, managed the investments, filed the taxes. I had access to the accounts, technically, but I rarely looked at them. I trusted him. Sophie showed me how to access our accounts online. We sat at my kitchen table with her laptop between us, logging into bank accounts and brokerage statements and credit card records. What we found made me sick. The joint savings account, the one I had been contributing to for 40 years, was nearly empty. $312 where there should have been over $100,000. Where did it go? I asked. Sophie clicked through the transaction history. Withdrawals, transfers, payments to accounts I did not recognize. He's been moving money for the past 2 years, she said. Small amounts at first. $5,000 here, $10,000 there. But look at this. She pointed to a line item from 3 months ago. $47,000 transfer to Coleman Family Trust. What trust? We don't have a trust. You don't, but apparently he does. Donald had created a trust in his name alone. He had funded it with our money, my money, without my knowledge or consent. The trust was the beneficiary of our life insurance policies. The trust would receive the proceeds from the sale of our house, the house that was legally mine, the house he was planning to sell out from under me after he had me declared incompetent. Can he do this? I asked. Not legally, but if you're in a nursing home and he has guardianship, who's going to stop him? Sophie closed the laptop. Grandma, we need to get you a lawyer, a real one, someone who specializes in elder law. That was when she told me about Harold Mitchell. Harold was 70 years old, semi-retired, and had a reputation for fighting cases that other lawyers thought were hopeless. He had handled Sophie's friend's grandmother's case the year before, another family trying to steal another elderly woman's assets, and he had won. He's expensive, Sophie warned, but he's good. I have money, I said. Money Donald doesn't know about. I had never told anyone about the account. Not Donald, not Brandon, not even my mother before she died. It was my secret, my safety net, my proof that some small part of me had always known this day might come. 34 years ago, I started putting money aside. $20 here, $50 there, cash from grocery shopping. Birthday checks from relatives that I cashed instead of depositing. Small amounts that no one would notice, that no one would miss. The account had grown. Slowly at first, then faster when I started getting serious about it. By the time I retired from teaching 10 years ago, I had over $60,000. With interest, with careful additions, with discipline that Donald had never suspected, that account had grown to almost $90,000. Enough to buy a truck, enough to hire a lawyer, enough to fight. I called Harold the next day. Our first meeting was in his office, a cluttered room in a building that smelled like old books and coffee. Harold was a tall man with white hair and kind eyes and a handshake that was surprisingly firm for someone his age. I told him everything. The papers, the trust, the financial records Sophie had helped me uncover, the 40 years of marriage that had led to this moment. Harold listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and looked at me with something that might have been respect. Mrs. Coleman, he said, your husband is an idiot. I laughed. I could not help it. The sound surprised me, rough and strange after so many weeks of holding everything in. He left a paper trail a mile long, Harold continued. The forged signatures, the unauthorized transfers, the fraudulent trust documents. All of it is traceable. All of it is evidence. He thought you would never find out, and he got careless. Can we stop him? We can do more than stop him. We can destroy him. Harold smiled, and it was not a kind smile. But we need more evidence. We need him on record admitting what he's planned. Do you think you can get that? How? Keep your phone on. Call me when you think something's about to happen. Let me listen. Let me record. It was risky. It was potentially illegal in some states. But Tennessee was a one-party consent state, which meant that as long as I was part of the conversation, I could record it without telling the other participants. I can do that, I said. Good. And Mrs. Coleman? Yes? Buy something expensive. Something that shows you're still in control of your faculties. Something that will make your husband nervous. That was when I decided to buy the truck. The red Ford F-150 was Donald's dream vehicle. He had talked about it for years, showed me pictures, priced out the options. But he had never bought it because he was saving for retirement, which I now knew meant he was stealing from me. So I bought it myself, walked into the dealership, paid cash, drove it off the lot, and called Harold on the way home. I'm 10 minutes out, I told him. Stay on the line. I'm recording, he said. Whatever happens, I'm here. I pulled into the driveway. I heard the laughter. I heard my husband mimicking my voice, calling me an idiot, planning to dump me in a home. And I pressed play. Now, sitting alone in my living room the night after throwing Donald out, I understood something I had not fully grasped before. The fight was not over. It was just beginning. Donald would not go quietly. Kimberly would not disappear. Brandon would have to choose between his mother and his wife, and I honestly did not know which way he would fall. But I had Harold. I had Sophie. I had the evidence and the money and the truth. And tomorrow morning, I was going to use all of it. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Dad called. He's furious. Kimberly is telling everyone you've gone crazy. What do you need me to do? I typed back. Come over tomorrow morning. Bring coffee. We have work to do. The response was immediate. On my way at 7. Love you, Grandma. I set down the phone and looked around my empty house. The silence was strange. After 40 years of marriage, 40 years of another person breathing and snoring and complaining, the quiet felt almost aggressive. But it was my silence now, my house, my life, and I was not going to let anyone take it from me. Sophie arrived at 6:47 a.m. with 2 large coffees and a folder full of documents. I couldn't sleep, she said, setting everything on the kitchen table. So I did some digging. The folder contained printouts of emails. Brandon's emails, forwarded to Kimberly, forwarded to a cloud account that Sophie had accessed through a shared family password. They never changed it, Sophie said. The password to the family cloud account. It's still Coleman 2019. They probably forgot I even knew about it. I looked at the printouts. Email after email, stretching back 8 months. From Kimberly to Brandon, February 15th. Your mother is getting worse. I think it's time to talk to Dr. Patterson about an evaluation. From Brandon to Kimberly, February 16th. Are you sure? She seemed fine at dinner last week. From Kimberly to Brandon, February 16th. That's the problem. She seems fine, but we both know she's not. Remember what happened at Christmas? I stopped reading. Christmas. What had happened at Christmas? I thought back. We had hosted dinner at our house like we did every year. I had cooked the ham. I had set the table. I had wrapped the presents and decorated the tree and done everything I always did. What happened at Christmas? I asked Sophie. She looked uncomfortable. I wasn't there. I was at Mom's. Sophie's mother, Brandon's ex-wife, had divorced him 6 years ago. She lived in Nashville now, remarried to a dentist, and Sophie split her time between both families. She had been at her mother's house for Christmas Day. I kept reading. From Kimberly to Brandon, February 16th. She put salt in the pumpkin pie instead of sugar. She forgot Uncle Jerry's name. She asked me 3 times what time dinner was. Don't you remember? None of that was true. I had not put salt in the pumpkin pie. I had used my mother's recipe, the same recipe I had used for 40 years, and everyone had asked for seconds. Uncle Jerry had not been there because Uncle Jerry had died in 2019, and I had asked about dinner once, not 3 times, because Kimberly kept changing the plans. But now I understood. Kimberly was building a narrative. A paper trail of incidents that never happened, of confusion that existed only in her emails. "Keep reading," Sophie said quietly. From Kimberly to Brandon, March 3rd. I talked to Dr. Patterson today. He says early-stage dementia can be hard to diagnose, but the signs are there if you know what to look for. He's willing to do a private evaluation if we can get her into the office. From Brandon to Kimberly, March 3rd. How are we supposed to do that? Mom hates doctors. From Kimberly to Brandon, March 3rd. We don't tell her it's an evaluation. We tell her it's a routine checkup. She'll never know the difference. From Brandon to Kimberly, March 4th. Okay, I'll set it up. I set down the papers. My hands were trembling. They were going to trick me into a fake medical evaluation, I said. They were going to have a doctor lie about my mental state. It gets worse. Sophie pulled out another stack of printouts. This is from last month. From Kimberly to Dr. Patterson, September 2nd. Thank you for your help with this. I've attached the documents we discussed. Once the evaluation is complete, we should be able to move forward with the guardianship petition by mid-October. From Dr. Patterson to Kimberly, September 2nd. I understand. I've reviewed the case and I believe we have sufficient grounds to proceed. My fee, as discussed, is $5,000, payable in cash upon completion of the evaluation. $5,000. That was the price of my freedom. That was what it cost to buy a doctor who would write down lies about a woman he had never examined. This is evidence of fraud, Sophie said. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Maybe more. Harold needs to see this. I nodded, but I was not really listening. I was thinking about Brandon, my son, my only child. The boy I had rocked to sleep, taught to ride a bike, sent to college with money I saved by giving up vacations and new clothes and everything I thought I did not need. He knew. He had always known. He was part of the plan from the beginning. The emails made it clear. Brandon was not an innocent bystander being manipulated by his wife. He was an active participant. He had scheduled the fake evaluation. He had helped create the false documentation. He had agreed to the plan that would steal my house, my money, my life. Grandma? Sophie touched my arm. Are you okay? But I will be. I gathered the papers and put them back in the folder. There would be time to grieve later. Time to cry for the son I thought I knew, for the family I thought I had. Right now, there was work to do. Call Harold, I said. Tell him we have everything he needs. The meeting was at Harold's office that afternoon. Sophie drove me in the truck. She loved that truck. Her eyes had gone wide when she saw it in the driveway. You actually bought it, she said. The F-150. Grandpa's dream truck. It's my truck now. Hell yes, it is. Harold reviewed the emails in silence. His face did not change as he read, but I saw his jaw tighten when he reached the exchange with Dr. Patterson. This is better than I hoped, he said finally. Medical fraud, conspiracy, attempted theft through abuse of guardianship proceedings. We have enough here to file criminal charges. Criminal charges? Sophie leaned forward. Against who? Patterson, certainly. Possibly your father as well. Definitely Kimberly. Harold set down the papers. But criminal charges take time. They're expensive. They're unpredictable. Is that what you want, Ruth? I thought about it. Brandon behind bars. Brandon in handcuffs. Being led away by police. His mugshot in the local paper. I want my life back, I said. I want my house, my money, my freedom. I don't want revenge. I just want to be left alone. Then we file civil charges. We use the threat of criminal prosecution as leverage. We make them so afraid of what we could do that they give you everything you want, just to make us go away. Can we do that? Harold smiled. Ruth, by the time I'm done with them, they'll be begging you to take their settlements. We spent the next 2 hours going over strategy. Harold explained the legal process, the timelines, the potential outcomes. He was thorough and patient, and occasionally funny in a dry lawyer sort of way. But underneath all the planning, I kept thinking about the same thing. 40 years of marriage. 40 years of loving a man who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle. I thought about the early days, when Donald was charming and handsome and full of promises. He was going to build a business. He was going to give me a beautiful life. All I had to do was trust him, support him, stand by him while he climbed his way to success. I did all of that. I gave up my career. I had been a music teacher, good at it, loved by my students, to raise Brandon and keep house and be the wife Donald needed. I cooked his meals, hosted his parties, smiled at his clients, pretended not to notice when he came home smelling like someone else's perfume. I thought I was being a good wife. I thought sacrifice was what marriage meant, but sacrifice was not supposed to mean erasure. It was not supposed to mean becoming invisible in your own life, a footnote in your own story. Ruth? Harold's voice brought me back. Are you with us? I'm with you. What's next? Next, we freeze the accounts. I'll file an emergency motion tomorrow morning. We'll claim financial abuse, which this clearly is, and ask the court to prevent any further transfers until the case is resolved. Will that work? It should. Judges take financial abuse of elders very seriously, especially when there's documented evidence of fraud. Harold began organizing his papers. In the meantime, I need you to do something difficult. What? Don't talk to Donald. Don't talk to Kimberly. Don't talk to Brandon. Any communication between you and them could be used against us. Everything goes through me. What if Brandon calls me? Harold's face softened. I know this is hard. He's your son, but right now, he's also the enemy. If you talk to him, if you give him any opening, he'll use it against you. They all will. I nodded. I understood, but understanding did not make it easier. Sophie drove me home. The sun was setting over Knoxville, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It should have been beautiful, but I could not feel it. Grandma, Sophie said as we pulled into the driveway. I need to tell you something. What? Mom called me this morning. Dad told her what happened. Sophie's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She said she's proud of you. She said she wished she had fought back when she was married to him. I looked at my granddaughter, this beautiful, brave girl who had chosen to stand with me when her own father chose against me. Thank you, Sophie, for everything. I'm not doing this just for you, Grandma. I'm doing it because it's right, and because someone has to show Dad that you can't just throw people away when they become inconvenient. She helped me inside, made sure I had dinner, stayed until she was certain I was okay. Then she drove back to campus with promises to call in the morning. I sat in my kitchen alone. The house was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Normal sounds of a normal house that did not feel normal anymore. I looked at my phone. No messages from Donald. No messages from Brandon. Either they were plotting their next move or they were too afraid to contact me. Good. Let them be afraid. But as I sat there in the growing dark, I felt something I had not expected. Grief. Grief for the marriage I thought I had. Grief for the son I thought I raised. Grief for the 40 years I spent building a life that turned out to be built on sand. I let myself cry. For the first time since I found those papers in the printer, I let myself feel the full weight of what I had lost. Then I wiped my eyes, turned on the lights, and started making a list. Things to do tomorrow, people to call, battles to fight. The crying was over. The war was just beginning, and I intended to win. The court granted the emergency motion on Friday morning. Harold called me at 9:47 a.m. with the news. It's done, he said. All joint accounts are frozen. Donald can't touch a penny without court approval. I was standing in my kitchen, drinking coffee, watching the cardinals at the bird feeder my mother had given me 20 years ago. The news should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something much harder. What happens now? Now we wait for them to make a mistake. And they will make a mistake, Ruth. People like this always do. Donald made his mistake 3 hours later. He showed up at the house. I watched him pull into the driveway in his old Honda. The one he had been driving since he sold my car 6 months ago. I say sold because I never agreed to sell it. He forged my signature on the title, same as he forged my signature on everything else. I did not answer the door. I stood in the hallway and waited for him to give up and leave. He did not give up. Ruth! He pounded on the door with his fist. Ruth! Open this door! We need to talk. I pulled out my phone and called Harold. He's here, I said. At the house. He's trying to get in. Don't open the door. Don't say anything. I'm calling the police. The pounding continued. Ruth, I know you're in there. Your truck is in the driveway. Open the damn door! I moved to the kitchen, away from the windows, away from anywhere Donald might see me. My heart was racing. 40 years of marriage, and I had never been afraid of my husband, but I was afraid now. Ruth! His voice was getting louder, more desperate. This is my house too. You can't lock me out of my own house. Except it was not his house. It had never been his house. The deed was in my name, inherited from my parents, never transferred, never shared. Harold had confirmed it 3 times. Donald had no legal claim to the property whatsoever. Through the kitchen window, I saw a police cruiser pull up to the curb. 2 officers got out. They approached Donald, who was still standing on the porch, his face red with anger. I could not hear what they said, but I watched Donald's face change, from anger to confusion to something that looked almost like fear. One of the officers gestured toward the street. Donald said something, pointed at the house, shook his head. The officer said something else. Donald left. He walked to his car with his shoulders hunched, his head down. He did not look back at the house. He just got in the Honda and drove away. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find the 2 officers standing on my porch, professional and polite. Mrs. Coleman, I'm Officer Davis. We received a call about a disturbance. My husband was trying to get in. He doesn't live here anymore. Yes, ma'am, we understand. We've explained to him that he needs to stay away from the property. If he comes back, call 911 immediately. Thank you, officer. They left. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart still pounding. The phone rang. Harold, are you all right? I'm fine. The police came. He left. Good. This is exactly what I was hoping for. Hoping for? Donald just violated the terms of our motion. The court ordered him to stay away from you and from the property. By showing up today, he's given us grounds for contempt charges. Harold's voice was calm, almost satisfied. This is how we win, Ruth. We let them make mistakes, and we use those mistakes against them. I sat down at the kitchen table. My hands were still shaking. What happens next? Tomorrow, I file a motion for contempt of court. Monday, we get a hearing date. By the end of next week, if everything goes according to plan, Donald will be facing potential jail time unless he agrees to our settlement terms. Settlement terms? The house, the truck, full restitution of all funds transferred without your consent, plus a restraining order that keeps him at least 500 feet away from you for the next 5 years. It was more than I had hoped for, more than I had dared to imagine. And Brandon? I asked. And Kimberly? That's more complicated. Brandon is your son, and the courts are reluctant to criminally charge family members in cases like this. But Kimberly and Dr. Patterson are fair game. I'm preparing charges against both of them for fraud and conspiracy. Patterson agreed to evaluate me for money. He was going to write false medical reports. Yes, and that's a serious crime. His medical license is on the line. Once he realizes how much trouble he's in, I expect him to cooperate fully with our case in exchange for leniency. The web was tightening. All the people who had plotted against me, all the plans they had made in secret, all the lies they had told, everything was coming apart. Harold, I said, I need to ask you something. Of course. Why are you helping me? I know you're getting paid, but this seems like more than just a job to you. There was a long pause on the line. My mother, Harold finally said. She died 8 years ago. Alzheimer's. The real kind, not the fake kind your family was trying to invent. I'm sorry. Before she got sick, she told me about a conversation she had with my father. He wanted to put her in a home, take control of her finances, sell the house they had lived in for 40 years. She said no. She fought him. and she won. What happened to your father? He died alone in a rental apartment in Florida. My mother outlived him by 6 years. Harold's voice was hard now, sharp. When Sophie called me about your case, I knew I had to take it. Not just for the money, not just for the challenge, for my mother. For every woman who has been told she's too old or too confused or too inconvenient to matter. I felt tears prick at my eyes. Not sad tears. Something else. Something that felt almost like hope. Thank you, Harold. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we've won. The weekend passed slowly. Sophie came over on Saturday with groceries and her laptop. We spent the afternoon organizing documents, reviewing bank statements, building the timeline of everything Donald and Kimberly had done. Sunday was quiet. I went to church for the first time in months. I sat in the back pew and listened to the sermon about forgiveness and grace and letting go of anger. I was not ready to forgive. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I could let go of the anger. I could stop letting it consume me. Monday morning, Harold called with news. The contempt hearing is scheduled for Wednesday, but that's not why I'm calling. What is it? Patterson reached out through his lawyer. He wants to make a deal. I sat down. What kind of deal? Full cooperation. He'll testify about everything. The fake evaluation, the payments from Kimberly, the whole scheme. In exchange, we agree not to pursue criminal charges and not to report him to the medical board. That seems like a lot to give up. It is. But his testimony is worth it. With Patterson on our side, the case against Kimberly becomes airtight. She'll have no choice but to settle. And Brandon? Harold was quiet for a moment. Brandon is a different story. He's been reaching out to Sophie, asking her to arrange a meeting with you. What did she tell him? She told him to contact me, which he did this morning. Harold paused. He says he wants to apologize. He says he was manipulated by Kimberly, that he didn't understand what he was doing, that he never wanted to hurt you. I closed my eyes. My son. My boy. The child I had nursed through fevers and comforted through nightmares and loved with everything I had. Do you believe him? I believe that people are complicated. I believe that Brandon made terrible choices. But I also believe that Kimberly was the driving force behind those choices. Harold sighed. What I don't know is whether he's genuinely sorry or whether he's just trying to save himself. What do you recommend? I recommend we let him testify. If he's willing to tell the truth about Kimberly's role in all of this, it strengthens our case. And if he's lying, if this is just another manipulation, we'll find out soon enough. I thought about it for a long time. The phone was silent while Harold waited. Arrange the meeting, I finally said, but not here. Not at my house. Somewhere neutral, somewhere safe. My office. Wednesday after the contempt hearing. Is that acceptable? That's acceptable. I hung up the phone and looked around my empty kitchen. The sun was streaming through the windows, making patterns on the floor. Outside, the birds were singing. Normal life continuing as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. In 3 weeks, I had gone from being a victim to being a fighter. From being someone who things happened to being someone who made things happen. The meeting with Brandon would be hard. Seeing my son after everything he had done, hearing whatever excuses he had prepared, deciding whether to forgive or condemn, all of it would be painful. But I was not afraid anymore. I had faced my husband's betrayal. I had faced my daughter-in-law's scheming. I had faced the possibility of losing everything I had spent my life building. I could face my son. Wednesday was 3 days away. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to decide what kind of mother I wanted to be, what kind of woman I wanted to become. I picked up my phone and called Sophie. It's me, I said. We need to talk about Brandon. The contempt hearing lasted 47 minutes. Harold had warned me it would be quick. These hearings are procedural, he said. The judge reviews the evidence, hears arguments from both sides, and makes a ruling. There's not much drama involved. He was wrong about the drama. Donald showed up with a lawyer I had never seen before. A young man in an expensive suit who looked like he was fresh out of law school. He kept shuffling papers and whispering to Donald, who sat rigid in his chair, refusing to look in my direction. The judge was a woman in her 60s, stern-faced, with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She reviewed the paperwork Harold had submitted, asked a few clarifying questions, and then turned to Donald's lawyer. Counsel, your client was ordered to have no contact with Mrs. Coleman or the property at 4127 Magnolia Lane. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, but... And last Friday, October 18th, your client drove to that property and attempted to gain entry for approximately 14 minutes before being removed by police. Is that also correct? Your Honor, my client was simply trying to retrieve personal belongings from his own. It's not his home, Counsel. The deed is in Mrs. Coleman's name alone. Your client has no legal right to access the property. The young lawyer looked at Donald. Donald looked at the table. Neither of them said anything. I'm finding Mr. Coleman in contempt of court, the judge continued. The penalty is a fine of $5,000, payable within 30 days. Additionally, I'm extending the no-contact order and adding a provision that Mr. Coleman must remain at least 500 feet from Mrs. Coleman at all times. Your Honor, that's excessive. What's excessive, Counsel, is a man harassing his wife after being explicitly ordered not to. If your client violates this order again, he will face jail time. Am I clear? Yes, Your Honor. Good. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. It was over. Donald left the courtroom without looking at me. His lawyer followed, already on his phone, probably calling another lawyer to help clean up this mess. I sat in my chair and let out a breath I did not know I had been holding. Ruth. Harold touched my arm. It's time. Time for Brandon. The meeting was in Harold's conference room. Wood-paneled walls, a long table, leather chairs. Sophie had wanted to come, but I asked her to wait in the lobby. This was between me and my son. Brandon was already there when I arrived. He stood up when I entered, then sat back down, then stood up again. His hands were shaking. He looked terrible. Unshaven, pale, wearing a wrinkled shirt I recognized from 5 years ago. He had lost weight. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he had been crying. Good. Mom. His voice cracked. Thank you for seeing me. I sat down across from him. Harold took a seat at the end of the table, close enough to intervene if necessary, far enough to give us space. I'm here to listen, I said. Not to forgive. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm here. Brandon nodded. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I don't know where to start. Start with why. Why did you agree to have me committed? Why did you help Kimberly steal my money? Why did you stand there and let your father plan to throw me away like garbage? The words came out harder than I intended, but I did not take them back. Brandon stared at the table. I don't have a good answer. I don't have any answer that makes sense. Try. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he started talking. Kimberly said it was for your own good. She said you were getting confused, that you needed help, that we were doing you a favor by taking care of things before something bad happened. He shook his head. I wanted to believe her. It was easier than thinking about what we were really doing. And the money? The accounts? The forged signatures? Dad handled all of that. He said you'd agreed to it, that you wanted him to manage everything because it was too complicated for you. Brandon's voice broke. I should have asked. I should have talked to you directly. But I didn't because I didn't want to know the truth. The truth that your wife was a liar and your father was a thief? Yes. And what about you, Brandon? What are you? He looked up at me. For the first time since I entered the room, he met my eyes. A coward, he said. A fool. A terrible son who let the worst people in his life convince him to betray the best person he ever knew. The words hung in the air. I waited for something more, an excuse, a justification, some attempt to shift the blame. Nothing came. I've left Kimberly, Brandon said. I moved out last weekend. The divorce papers are already filed. Why? Because when I heard what Dad said to you, what he called you, I finally understood what I had become. I had become him, a man who uses people and throws them away. A man who only cares about money and comfort and himself. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is my statement. For Harold. For the court. For whoever needs it. He pushed the paper across the table. Everything Kimberly and Dad did. Every lie, every scheme, every dollar they stole. I'll testify to all of it. Under oath. In front of a judge. Harold picked up the paper and unfolded it. He read silently, his face revealing nothing. This is comprehensive, Harold finally said. This is exactly what we need. I know it doesn't make up for anything, Brandon said. I know I can't undo what I did, but I can tell the truth now. I can help make sure Kimberly and Dad face the consequences of what they did. I looked at my son, at this broken man sitting across from me, asking for something I was not sure I could give. Why should I believe you? I asked. Why should I believe this isn't just another manipulation? Another scheme to save yourself? You shouldn't. You have no reason to trust me. I destroyed whatever trust we had when I chose Kimberly over you. Brandon's hands were flat on the table, trembling. But I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to let me try to earn it back, however long it takes. Whatever it costs. The room was very quiet. Sophie told me about Dr. Patterson, I said. About the money Kimberly paid him. About the fake evaluation they were planning. I know. Did you know about that part? The fake medical records? The doctor who was going to lie about my mental state? Brandon closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. Yes, he whispered. I knew. And you didn't stop it. No. You were going to let them lock me away in a nursing home. You were going to let them steal my house, my money, my freedom. You were going to watch while they destroyed everything I spent my life building. Yes. The single word hung between us. No excuses, no explanations. Just the naked truth of what my son had been willing to do. Get out, I said. Brandon flinched like I had struck him. Mom, get out. Leave your statement with Harold. Testify if you want to, but don't expect forgiveness. Don't expect reconciliation. Don't expect me to pretend that what you did was forgivable just because you're sorry. I understand. Brandon stood up. His legs seemed unsteady. I just want you to know. I don't care what you want me to know. I cared what you thought for 40 years, Brandon. I cared about your happiness, your success, your future, and you repaid me by conspiring to have me declared incompetent. I stood up too. We faced each other across the table, mother and son, strangers now. Leave, I said, and don't contact me again. If you want to help, help through Harold, but I don't want to see your face. I don't want to hear your voice. I don't want to be reminded of what you were willing to do to your own mother. Brandon nodded. He walked to the door, opened it, stopped. I love you, Mom, he said. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I do. Then he left. I stood in the conference room, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. Harold was watching me with concern. Ruth, are you all right? No. I sat back down, but I will be. He seemed sincere. He seemed scared. There's a difference. Harold nodded. Fair enough. But his testimony is valuable, regardless of his motivations. With Patterson and Brandon both cooperating, Kimberly's case falls apart completely. Good. And Donald? What about Donald? His lawyer contacted me this morning. They want to settle. Full restitution, no contest on the divorce. Immediate transfer of all assets back to your name. I stared at him. They're giving up? They're cutting their losses. Donald knows the case is lost. He knows criminal charges are possible. He's trying to minimize the damage. What do you recommend? I recommend we take the deal. It gets you everything you wanted without a lengthy trial. And it lets Donald walk away, which means he'll stay out of your life for good. I thought about it. Donald, alone, starting over with nothing. Kimberly, facing fraud charges, her marriage destroyed, her schemes exposed. Brandon, divorced and adrift, hoping for forgiveness he would never receive. And me, free, safe, whole. Take the deal, I said. End this. Harold nodded. Consider it done. Sophie was waiting in the lobby when I came out. She jumped up when she saw me. How did it go? I looked at my granddaughter. This fierce, loyal girl who had chosen me over her own father. It's almost over, I said. One more step, and then we're done. What step? Signing the papers, and then learning how to live again. Sophie hugged me. I held on to her, feeling her warmth, her strength, her love. I'm proud of you, Grandma. I'm proud of you too, Sophie. You saved my life. No. She pulled back and looked at me. You saved your own life. I just helped. We walked out of Harold's office together, into the bright October afternoon. The trees were turning gold and red. The air smelled like fallen leaves and wood smoke. A new season, a new beginning, and a future that finally belonged to me. The divorce was finalized on November 15th. I sat in the courthouse signing papers while Donald sat across from me, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. His lawyer was there. Harold was there. A court clerk witnessed everything. When it was done, when the last signature was dry and the last document was filed, I stood up and walked out of the room without saying a word to my former husband. The settlement gave me everything I had asked for: the house, the truck, full restitution of all stolen funds, plus interest. Donald was left with his clothes, his Honda, and the shame of what he had done. Kimberly fared worse. The fraud charges stuck. Patterson's testimony was damning. He described in detail how she had approached him, how she had explained the plan, how she had paid him $5,000 in cash to write a false medical evaluation of a woman he had never examined. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison, plus 5 years of probation. She also lost her real estate license. When she got out, she would have nothing: no career, no husband, no access to the money she had tried to steal. Brandon testified at her trial. He stood in the witness box and told the truth about everything: the guardianship scheme, the financial theft, the conspiracy to have me committed. His voice was steady, his words clear. He did not try to minimize his own role. After his testimony, I saw him in the hallway. He looked at me with hope in his eyes, waiting for some sign of reconciliation. I walked past him without speaking. Some betrayals cannot be forgiven. Some wounds are too deep to heal. Maybe someday I would find it in myself to speak to my son again, to hear his apologies, to consider the possibility of rebuilding what he had destroyed. But not today. Not yet. December came with snow and cold and the particular silence of winter in Knoxville. I spent the holidays alone in my house, by choice, enjoying the quiet after so many years of chaos. Sophie came on Christmas Day. She brought presents and hot chocolate and stories about her classes. She was doing well in school, making plans for law school, talking about specializing in elder law. "Because of you," she said, "because of what happened to you. I want to make sure no one else goes through what you went through." I hugged her. I had cried so many tears in the past 3 months, but these were different. These were tears of pride. "You're going to be amazing," I told her. "Whatever you do, whoever you become, you're going to be amazing." Harold stopped by on New Year's Eve. He brought a bottle of champagne and a folder full of documents. "Final accounting," he said, handing me the folder. "The last of the funds have been transferred back to your accounts. You're officially whole again." I opened the folder. The numbers were there, black and white, irrefutable. $117,000 returned to where it belonged. "Thank you, Harold." "For everything." "Thank me by living well. That's the best revenge there is." We toasted to the new year, to new beginnings, to surviving. After Harold left, I stood at my kitchen window and watched the snow fall. The same window I had looked out of for 40 years. The same backyard where Brandon had played as a child, where I had planted tomatoes and roses and dreams of a future that had not turned out the way I planned. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the future I had now was better than the one I had imagined. In January, I did something I had not done in decades. I signed up for a class, a music class at the community center downtown. Piano, the instrument I had played as a girl. The skill I had abandoned when I got married because Donald thought it was impractical. The teacher was a young woman named Elena, patient and encouraging. The other students were mostly retirees like me, people rediscovering passions they had set aside years ago. I was terrible at first. My fingers were stiff, my memory rusty. But I practiced every day, and slowly the music came back. By March, I could play a simple sonata. By May, I was working on Chopin. Sophie came to my first recital. She sat in the front row of the community center auditorium, her phone out to record everything. tears streaming down her face as I played. It was not a perfect performance. I missed notes. My timing was off, but I played all the way through, and when I finished, the audience applauded. I took a bow, and for the first time in years, I felt something I had almost forgotten how to feel. Summer brought longer days and warmer nights. I started taking road trips in the truck, exploring places I had always wanted to see: the Smoky Mountains, Nashville, the Gulf Coast. Sometimes Sophie came with me. Sometimes I went alone. Both were good. In August, 1 year after everything began, I got a letter. It was from Brandon, handwritten, 3 pages long. He apologized again for what he had done. He told me about his new job, his new apartment, his new life. He said he was seeing a therapist, working through the things that had made him susceptible to Kimberly's manipulation. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not ask to see me. He just wanted me to know that he was trying to be better. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and did not respond, but I did not throw it away. The second Christmas alone was easier than the first. Sophie came again, and this time she brought a friend, a young man from her law school class, nervous and polite, clearly hoping to make a good impression. I liked him. He reminded me of the good parts of Donald, the parts I had fallen in love with before everything went wrong. The charm without the manipulation, the ambition without the cruelty. "Is this serious?" I asked Sophie later, when her friend had stepped outside to call his parents. "Maybe," she said. "Is that okay?" "It's more than okay. Just promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you'll always keep your own bank account, your own savings, your own independence." Sophie laughed, but her eyes were serious. "I promise, Grandma. I learned from the best." New Year's Eve came again. I stood at my window, watching the snow, thinking about everything that had happened in the past year. Donald was gone, living somewhere in Florida, starting over with nothing. Kimberly was in prison, counting down the months until her release. Brandon was somewhere in between, not quite lost, not quite found. And I was here, in my house, with my truck in the driveway and my piano in the living room and my granddaughter sleeping in the guest bedroom upstairs. I had lost so much: a husband, a son, 40 years of marriage, faith in people I thought I could trust. But I had gained something too, something harder to name: myself. I had found the woman I was before I became Ruth Coleman, Donald's wife. Before I became Brandon's mother, Kimberly's victim, a pawn in other people's games. I was just Ruth now. Ruth Eleanor Coleman, 65 years old, divorced, free, and it was enough. The clock struck midnight. Outside, I could hear fireworks in the distance, celebrating the arrival of another year. I poured myself a glass of champagne, the good kind, the kind I used to save for special occasions, and raised it to the empty room. "To new beginnings," I said to no one. Then I drank, and I smiled, and I sat down at my piano. The first notes of Chopin filled the house. My fingers found the keys without hesitation, muscle memory returning after 50 years of neglect. I played until 2 a.m. I played until my hands ached. I played because I could, because I wanted to, because there was no one to tell me to stop. When I finally went to bed, the snow was still falling. The house was quiet. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in 40 years, the uncertainty felt like freedom. And freedom, I was learning, was the greatest gift of all.